Great. So today is the last aliyah of last book of the book of Genesis, Bereshit, and Parashat Vayechi. So the way I want to really do this is there are some very important ideas that I want to share. So what I have done is, instead of bringing the Pesukim down, which really we are not learning anything per se from the Pesukim, so I am going to open up the book over here just if I need to refer. And I have a detailed summary of the aliyah. And once we go through the summary, you all will get an idea. And then from there, we will open it up for discussion. And well, we don't need it. Thanks. Okay. First aliyah. Yaakov lived his last 17 years in Egypt. When Yaakov sensed that he was nearing his death, he summoned Joseph and asked him to promise that he would bury him in the land of Canaan. Joseph acceded to the request. When Yaakov then fell ill, Joseph visited him accompanied by his sons Menashe and Ephraim. Yaakov adopts Menashe and Ephraim as his own sons. Nisim, you want to spotlight me, because to spotlight केल्यानंतरच माझा phone चालतो, नाहीतर it becomes blank for whatever reason, I don't know. That is
no problem.
In the upgrade that they have done.
I can do that. It's just that sometimes then people might lose the presentation, but I'm doing it. Let's check. I've spotlighted you, and we can all see you on the big screen, but I think people will not be able to see the presentation, I think.
They can't?
Let
us ask them. If you have lost the presentation, just tell me, please. Please unmute and tell us.
तुम्हाला प्रेझेंटेशन दिसतेय? राबायांनी आलिया 1, 2, 3 असं होता, ती ऑरेंज स्क्रीन दिसते सगळ्यांना? Okay, great.
We can see the presentation.
Great. Okay, Rabbi, we'll continue. Thanks.
So second aliyah. Joseph presents his two sons to be blessed, placing Menashe, the firstborn, to Yaakov's right and Ephraim to Yaakov's left. Yaakov crossed his hands, placing his right hand on Ephraim's head and left on Menashe, and blessed them. Third aliyah. Joseph was disturbed that Yaakov placed his right hand on Ephraim, and he attempted to adjust his father's hands. Yaakov responded that he too will be great, but younger brother will be greater. Yaakov blessed the two boys further, saying that all of Israel will bless, invoking their names. May God make you like Ephraim and Menashe. Fourth aliyah. Yaakov summoned all his sons and blessed each one with a poetic parting personal message. Yaakov was chastised for his Reuben was chastised for his impetuousness. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Impetuousness. Shimon and Levi were rebuked for their anger, which expressed itself in the killing of the residents of Shechem. Judah was blessed with monarchy, success in waging battle, and an abundance of wine and milk in his portion. Zebulun was blessed with success in his sea trade endeavors. Yaakov likened Issachar to a thick-boned donkey who finds service. The word I made a spelling mistake over there. Service should be Service. Dan was blessed with the ability to judge. Fifth aliyah. Gad was blessed with bravery in battle. Asher's blessing was abundance. Naphtali was blessed with speed of a deer. Joseph was recognized for his charm and righteousness in suffering. and was showered with a variety of blessings. Benjamin was likened to a devouring wolf. This is 6th Aliyah. I'm reading 6th Aliyah. Yaakov then repeated his request to be buried in Israel in the cave of Machpelah in Hebron, and he passed away at the age of 147. After an extended national mourning period, Yosef received Pharaoh's permission to carry Yaakov's body up to Israel, or rather should be up to the land of Canaan. A huge funeral procession consisting of all the elders of Egypt as well as Yaakov's family went and buried Yaakov. After returning to Egypt, Yosef's brothers feared that now, after Yaakov had passed away, Yosef would exact revenge from them by selling them into slavery. Yosef reassured them that he harbored no ill feelings towards them. Yosef lived until the age of 110. Before passing away, he told his brothers that God would eventually take them out of Egypt and return them to the promised land. Yosef asked his brothers to promise that when the time arrived, the last line you all are missing from from the screen, they would carry his remains with him and enter him in Israel, bury him in Israel. This is the synopsis of Parashat Vayechi. Parashat Vayechi is the final final Shabbat that we are reading the book of Bereshit. So the book of Bereshit ends over here. So now, from what we just read, right, we can take away a few ideas. The most important idea over here that I understand is that Yaakov Avinu wants to be buried in the land of Israel. Now, I want you all to understand that this is not such an easy task that Yaakov is asking Yosef. Yosef is the viceroy, the second in charge. He is royalty of Egypt, right?
आवाज नहीं येते. आवाज नहीं येते.
तुम्हाला दुसऱ्यांना सगळ्यांना येत आहे?
येते, आवाज येते. कोणाला आवाज नाही येते? मावशी आहे काय?
हा, मला आवाज नाही येतो.
मावशी बघ तुझ्या इकडे स्पीकर व्हॉल्यूम फुल कर, आम्हाला सगळ्यांना क्लिअर ऐकू येते. कोण आहे आजूबाजूला त्यांना विचार, तुझ्या फोनचा व्हॉल्यूम वाढव. तुला माझा ऐकू येते मावशी?
फोन करून डिस्कनेक्ट करून परत कनेक्ट करायचं.
You can continue maybe, Rabbi.
Now, what was so important that Yaakov Avinu has to ask Yosef that he does this?
Hello. Hello. हाँ.
You
मला
think
आवाजच
about
नाही येते. माझ्याकडे माझा व्हॉल्यूम क्या व्हॉल्यूम आहे?
The family of, like the family of Pharaoh, right? If he is, this is a state funeral, you know, like it is like Rajiv Gandhi died and they buried him in Italy in his wife's place. How would that sound in India?
Odd and awkward and
not odd. It would be very disrespectful. You are the king or viceroy of this land, and suddenly when your father passes away, you are saying that my connection is with some other place, that I am giving priority to the land of Canaan. So this must have been quite a political problem, and a very, how Yosef was able to get the permission is, I mean, it is one of the highlights of his diplomatic career, I would say. Like, how could he convince the Pharaoh to say this royal funeral will happen in Canaan, right? So what does Yosef do? Yosef tells Pharaoh that they have an ancestral land where he has purchased his grave, which means that is what he has done. He has purchased the land for his grave, and that's why it is an ancestral grave where his parents are there, and that's why he has to be buried. But even with that, there is a state funeral, and then there's embalming like they did it in Egypt, and then the body, after 40 days in Egypt, goes to Canaan, and it says that all the leaders, all the kings of Canaan came for the funeral. Why? As we have mentioned earlier, from here we know that these kings were all subsidiaries. They were vassal kings of Egypt. So if there is an Egyptian king who passes away, or the father of a viceroy who passes away, they are bound to take part in it, and all of them came to this place to mourn for Yaakov Avinu. And then they took him to Maarat HaMachpelah and buried him over there. So this is what is exactly, why go over? Big deal, a person died, he is buried wherever he is buried. Yaakov Avinu, why has he to be buried in the land of Israel? What is the mystery of this burial? That is one question that each of us must ask. The second question that comes over here is really not spelled out in the summary, but I will read a few verses from our parasha. I need to change my reading goggles because my other specs are not there. So, and I'm going to read this and see how does it sound to you, right? And Jacob called his sons and said, "Come together, and I may tell you what is to befall you in the days to come. Assemble and hearken, O sons of Jacob, hearken to Israel your father." Okay. I'll read one more. Sometime afterwards, Joseph was told, "Your father is ill." So he took with him his two sons, Menashe and Ephraim. When Yaakov was told, "Your son Joseph has come to see you," Israel summoned his strength and sat up in the bed. What do you see over here? Then he says, noticing Joseph's sons, Israel asked, "Who are these?" And Joseph said to his father, "They are my sons whom God has given me." What do you see over here? Do you see something that I am trying to underline here? In the same line, you're talking about one person, yeah? You're using both his names. It starts off by saying that Jacob heard that Joseph is coming, and Israel sat up, as if a second person sat up. Yaakov is Israel, right? And if you pay attention to the blessing, your name Yaakov will never be called Yaakov no more. You will be called Israel. That is the name change at Luz, when Yaakov Avinu fights the angel in the night. The next time he gets the prophecy, his name is formally changed to Israel. But the Torah uses both these names. Probably Yaakov was called Israel from that day, like Abram was called Abraham, Sarai was called Sarah. So Yaakov should have been called Israel. But the Torah keeps on calling him Yaakov and decides to call him Israel mid-sentence. Why? What is the mystery of this Yaakov and Israel business? Ever thought of it? Then is there something else that I wanted to underline? Why does Yaakov or Israel decide to take Menashe and Ephraim as his own sons? Why does he adopt? I mean, they would have anyway continued in his family. What is the point of making? What we see, what will happen of Yaakov's action is there will be two more tribes, sort of. So you have 12 tribes and then you have a 13th tribe because one tribe will break into two, right? So you will have a sort of a 13th tribe. Why is that important? To understand this whole parasha, because this is the conclusion of Sefer Bereshit, there are a lot of concluding ideas over here which are very mystical. To understand our parasha today, it is very important to understand the whole story of what the book of Genesis, Bereshit, is wanting to teach us. If we can understand Bereshit, only then we will be able to really understand these clues, these questions. Okay. So now I am going to ask you to open up for a quick chat. What is Bereshit teaching us? I need answers.
Feel free to unmute yourselves and go ahead. Thank you.
Yes. Each one has to give me one answer. We are how many are we? 25?
18.
18?
I can see 18 devices, maybe 25
I
people.
need 18 answers. We have done the whole parasha of Bereshit. At least one idea. What is Bereshit talking about? Okay, from each one of us. You can repeat the idea if you don't have a original idea of. If you have the idea coming to you, don't listen to somebody else and say, this is what I think. You take a minute to think about an idea. Each one, what you are taking back from Bereshit. What does Bereshit teach us? And all 18 of us will unmute and tell me the idea. If it is repeated, it is okay. If it is your own, then it can be repeated because there may not be 18 ideas over there. Okay? But each one of you, please respond. Okay, let us start with Nissim.
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness. Very good. We see that the story of Yosef is about forgiveness.
This is Jeremiah.
Yeah, Jerry.
It is about being responsible for everyone. Brother stands up for another brother.
Nice. Brother stands for brother.
Rabbi,
Yes. Who's this?
this is Julie, Saul's wife.
Hi, Julie. How are you? Yes. Say.
I'm good. It's I feel it's connection to the land.
Connection to the land. Very nice. Very
Sharon
important
Hines
idea.
here. It is brother's love for brother, and he who wants to means he wants to be buried in Jerusalem. Means in a Holy Land.
Right. So two ideas. One land is connection to the land, and the
Yes.
other is brother's love for brothers. Very nice.
Brother, yes.
Who else would like to try? I want everybody to answer. Whatever comes to your mind, it is fine to be wrong. There is nobody who can be wrong. The idea will be there if it comes to your mind. We don't want to spend a lot of time. Open your process up and say whatever comes to your mind.
What is the question?
Question is, what is Bereshit teaching us? One idea. If you have more, you can share more.
Rabbi,
Yes.
there is one more. This is Julie.
Yes, Julie.
Continuation of the Jewish.
Continuity of Jews or Jewishness. As yet, the fact of the matter is we have not even started to become Jewish. So there is a continuity of something that you see over there, which will continue into Jewishness. Probably that's what you're saying, because Jews started off only in this parasha with Yaakov's 12 tribes, right?
Tribes.
So we are going to see some continuity into Jewishness. Maybe that's what you want to say.
Yes. Right.
You want to say what is the parasha of Bereshit, first parasha?
Akha book Bereshit, sir. From the first parasha from Adam to last parasha Vayechi. Is there anything that the whole book is trying to tell me? What is the point of the book? Because it is one story. It is one book.
It is very nice. It tells you that everything is done by the God. You cannot do anything for yourself.
Very
In the
important.
beginning, it says, God said, be water, we become the water, be these things. His words is the word.
Very important. Correct. God's
In
word.
the beginning, up to the end, he shows this way. He says, you will become the king. He became the king. He said, you become the king. He came the king. His word is word. You see the word.
Sharon auntie, तुम्ही mute करा. Yes. Yes, uncle.
From the beginning up to this
the
time.
Basic idea.
Basic is everything is
that Hakadosh Baruch Hu
is doing everything.
The world and he is
doing
involved
everything.
With the world. I will rephrase what you are saying. Hakadosh Baruch Hu has created the world and is involved with the world. Is that right?
Exactly.
Yes. Okay. Let's give others a chance to add.
हॅलो, ऐकू येते? श्वसनामध्ये
हाँ बोल मावशी.
मी काय म्हणते, असं काय आहे ते एवढं नाही समजत, पण मला वाटतं देवाच्या इच्छेने नेहमी सेकंड भाऊला पहिल्याचा मान मिळाला आणि पहिल्याला दुसऱ्याचा मिळाला.
माझ्याकडे व्हॉइस फाटतोय, तू रिपीट करू शकशील? मला कळलं नाही.
एक मिनिट.
मग मी हेडफोन घालून बोल, कारण मला पण मम्मी काहीतरी सेकंडला जरासं सिग्निफिकन्स जास्ती आहे असं मम्मी काहीतरी बोलली. या बुक मध्ये घडी घडी ते दिसून येते, हायलाइट होते असं काहीतरी.
ऐकू येते?
हा मम्मी क्लिअर आहे, बोल.
नाही, मी काय बोलते, नेहमी असं 2-3 इसाकच्या वेळेला आणि याकोबच्या वेळेला आणि मेनाशे एफ्राईमच्या वेळेला सेकंड वाल्याचा महत्व, सेकंड वाल्याला पहिला महत्व मिळतोय आणि पहिल्या वाल्याचं सेकंड होते. असं एकूण आता त्याचे काय त्याचा
सिग्निफिकन्स काय आहे ते बघायला पाहिजे. Second over the first.
Yes. Thank you.
This is something that comes back again and again in Bereshit. Good. So we have 6 points.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello. मी काय बोलते, मी जोश अंकल बोलते. हे पराशा जेव्हा पृथ्वी बनवली हे वर्ल्ड आणि त्यांनी दुसऱ्या शिनीलाच दिले. मी बेरेशितच्या दुसऱ्या पार्ट मध्ये दिस वर्ल्ड इज क्रिएटेड फॉर बी अब्राहम, म्हणजे अब्राहमाच्या इस्रायल लोकांसाठी बनवले गेले असं आहे. हॅलो. नाही ऐकायला.
ठीक आहे.
ऐकू आला. बरं.
hint मिलता है कि this world was created for Abraham. Okay. But what is the main? I am saying let's be more. What if I start the story from Adam and end the story at wherever it is ending with the blessings of Yaakov Avinu, right? What is the takeaway? काय मी ह्या स्टोरी बरोबर शिकलो तर ठीक आहे. तुम्ही म्हणता की it is about even the creation and everything is for the sake of Abraham and his family. That is what Rashi says. In fact, in the first statement, there is a very interesting. He says, why does the Torah start with all these stories? Because the Torah is about Jewish people. तर त्यांनी मला मिtzvot द्यायला पाहिजे होते. पहिला मिtzvah आहे आपल्याला इस्रायल सोडली तेव्हा. You have to make this the first. Start counting the year from Rosh Chodesh Nisan. That is the first mitzvah that was given to Am Israel. Second mitzvah was the mitzvah of Pesach. तिकडे चालू करा. हे सगळी गोष्ट कशाला ऍड केली तर there is a reason that whoever is giving me mitzvot, he has given me the land of Israel and he is the one who is the creator. हे आपल्याला सांगण्यासाठी. So you are right. There is certainly such a inclination that everything is for the sake of family of Abraham. Okay. 7 points.
Rabbi,
point. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's something like, sticking to the vision of Abraham Avinu, like, and or else like, they continuing their legacy, or whatever the vision that was being given to the Abraham Avinu, maybe they're continuing it. And also we can see in the other way, maybe Abraham Avinu and his sons and everyone are sticking to completing the Hashem's plan. So whatever the Hashem plan is, to have one complete nation, whatever he was trying to form a complete nation for himself. So maybe Abraham Avinu and his sons were stick to Hashem's vision to fulfill to fulfill his vision.
Fantastic. That was Sharon?
Yeah, Rabbi.
Sharon. Very, very important. That is one of the tasks, but that I would say that really becomes the second half of the book of Bereshit, which is an important task, and we have to see how it works into the full book of Bereshit, how Hashem's plan is that of Abraham, which is also what Joshua uncle is saying. Ahuvia, in fact, instead of coming online, has shown me her answer over here, which says that it is learning from mistakes. That is the idea of the whole book of Bereshit. It is about learning from mistakes. We see that Adam made a mistake and later on Cain made a mistake, and it's about some kind of a repair that this whole book is talking about. Very important ideas. Great. I would like to bring a better or weave all these ideas together with what I'm going to share with you just now. Okay. Once we understand that idea, we will then be able to understand what questions we rose about Yaakov Avinu and Israel. Why is Yaakov called Israel sometimes, and Yaakov sometimes in the same line in the Torah? Once he's called Yaakov and once he's called Israel, or in the same theme they are talking about. What is the whole thing with the 13th tribe? That was the second question. The third question we asked was, can anybody remind me what was the third question that we asked? What is so important to bring back to bury in Israel? That was the third question we asked, right? Okay. We will begin from the beginning. Parashat Bereshit, the book of Bereshit. In Parashat Bereshit, we spoke about Gan Eden and Adam. Yeah. Then we heard about the fall of Adam and the sin of Cain. Then we heard about the sin of the people during the story of Noah. Then the story of Babel, or rather there's a small story of Noah's family, Noah getting drunk, and then Noah's family and its problems, how Noah responded to the fact that they found him nude. Then you have the story of Babel, and then you have the story of Abraham. Then Abraham's family, Lot, story of Sodom Gomorrah, story of Ishaq, story of Esau and Yaakov, story of Yosef. This is the bigger, if you want to make a timeline of the stories of Bereshit, these are the highlights of the story of Bereshit, right? The story of Bereshit really is the story of human consciousness. Bear with me, I will show you how. And this story is imprinted in us, every individual. This story is imprinted in us. I want you to understand what the Torah is taking us through. The Torah says that God created the world, and this is what Sharon was probably wanting to say. But I'm going to sort of sharpen the whole idea. What Sharon says, that God created the world with a aim. There is a goal. What is the aim of the world? The world was created with Adam supposed to shomer, to preserve Gan Eden. What does that mean? He was supposed to keep the let's see what is the right word. Let's use the word status quo. Status quo in Gan Eden. What it meant was he was supposed to preserve and look after Gan Eden. And just by doing that, he didn't need to do any more mitzvot. He didn't need to do any extra action. Just by being there, eating from all the other trees, preserving the trees, watering the trees, whatever that may mean spiritually, we don't know. He was able to achieve the goal. What was being achieved was, we get that hint in that first pasuk where it says there was no rain, and that's why there was no human beings. That's why there was no rains. From there, we understand that there was a certain channelization that Adam was able to achieve, through which he was able to raise the physicality, the world that he represented, because he was a product of the world. He was created from Adama. Adam as in Adama, the same word. Adam is a representation of Adama. So God created the world. In his action of creating the world goes further and further and further away from God's intensity, let's say. Because God's intensity could destroy the world, it needs to be away from him. But at the same time, there has to be some way that it is infused with God. When we call that holiness. That holiness is brought by Adam being the conduit. Adam has to keep the world as it is, and the world will then able to get more and more godliness into it through the channels that Adam has opened. We'll call them the trees, and world will be full of holiness. The world devoid of holiness is not what God wants. God wants to bring the world to a continued connection with him and his holiness. And this is something experientially. I'm not talking intellectually. Experientially, the whole world becomes aware of God, as is even every stone, every particle, everything in the cosmos. When I say Earth, it doesn't mean only the planet Earth. It means the whole cosmos. Now, in doing this, it was important that Adam had plugged in, or God allowed Adam, when he was made to sit in Gan Eden, to be in Gan Eden, he was basically plugged in into what we call a cosmic consciousness, a consciousness that is, or we'll call it a universality of everything. Everything is one. So the original universality is Ikhud. We will call that God consciousness, which is only in God. God is conscious of himself. That is only one unity. Everything is Echad, Shema Israel. Right? That is what Shema Israel talks about. Everything is one. Then God and creation are two, because creation has to happen in a duality. But the consciousness of humanity, Adam, as in representing the whole cosmos, he has been able to plug him into a whole consciousness of the creation, the whole cosmos, not only the earth, not only our planet, not only our solar system, but the whole cosmos. That is why you will see, when we spoke about when Adam sinned, the earth was cursed. And then again, the earth was cursed in Noah's time. So what was the cursing? Is because the channel that brings the beracha is Adam. If Adam blocks the channel, the earth automatically descends further and further away from holiness, from godliness. And again, experientially, I'm talking about, like the plants get sunlight, there is something that the plants used to get as, or physicality used to get from holiness, which is disconnected because of Adam's eating from the fruit. That is the first level. You will see in us as human beings, we retain this consciousness called the cosmic consciousness. If we go into very deeper levels, we will see that is the level of Atzilut in us, that we are able to feel that we are unified whole with everything. That was what Adam was. He was a representation of humanity as a unified being with the cosmos. And that's why he was able to change and bring, by alone himself, he was able to bring holiness into the whole cosmic structure. But he missed the mark. The missing the mark, he came closer to his earth nature, which is the representation of that is his selfishness. He started to have a very strong drive towards his desires and his passions and his ambitions. Adam as in humanity, I'm talking about, right? So humanity moved that part. It moved one level less from unified consciousness, or we will call it cosmic consciousness, into a community consciousness. It becomes a human consciousness. The second thing is a universal consciousness of humanity. Maybe even the animal kingdoms were also involved. But because we see what is the proof? Adam, just by naming the animals, was able to make their tikkun, to bring them to their fruition, bring holiness to the animals. That is all he needed. He was connected with the whole cosmos. But later on, that is not the case. We see that Cain, because of his passion, because of his aggressiveness, he goes against his brother, breaking that understanding of oneness. You have in your consciousness, you are all one, but he broke that consciousness of oneness, saying that I am separate and you are separate. Although they were at a feeling that they were one. Even with Cain, they were at a feeling that they were one with each other. Although they had maybe descended one level down, that they could not feel that they were one with God as yet. They were one with everybody else. But from Cain, they took a road where they were fueling their self. And till the story of Noah, we see that they had descended to a level where they were killing each other, they were stealing from each other because their oneness had disintegrated. From there, we see that collective consciousness was not being supported by the humanity. So the collectivity of humanity had to be destroyed. So we get the story of the deluge. And Noah was the only person who understood that and that's why it says with Noah, Noah's father recognized that Noah has the ability to save the world. Noah has the ability to change the cursed earth. Why? The cursed earth was like the block, the beracha coming down to the earth from the channels created in Gan Eden were blocked. But Noah had the ability to unblock it. And that's why he says that it will be eased. But unfortunately for him to do that, all of the other people of the earth who were in the community were destroyed. The communal consciousness went away with that area, that level. And Noah recognized that. And a second kind of collective consciousness, let us call it, not a communal consciousness, but there is a collective consciousness. Noah and his family and his animals, they were in a collective, they were all one. He was sharing the ark with them, he was sharing the reality with them. At that level, he is allowed to eat from animals or the tikkun, because the earth has still gone further. It has been further cursed because of the deluge. But on the other hand, it is a restarting of the game, because the first level was when you were in cosmic consciousness and collective consciousness has been lost. Now Noah is on a collective consciousness where he will be able to mend for his animals and his family. But even that, we see, is lost at the end of the story of Babel. What is the story of Babel talking about? Babel is trying to re-establish that collective consciousness. Babel is wanting to say we are all one. There was one unity, there was one language, there was oneness. But that oneness was at a very high price. And what was the price they were paying? The price they were paying was there was no individuality. All individuality had to be lost. Everybody was for the goal. Everybody was for making the tower. If the person was climbing the tower and he fell down, then nobody cared about it. But the stone fell down, then everybody was hue and cry. They were crying. That is the Midrash. What is the Midrash saying? That they wanted to reconnect to that cosmic consciousness, being all like one, but without honoring the individual, without honoring that separateness. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is all for the individual also. So you have to have the individual, not against the individual you have the cosmic. Because of the individual you have the cosmic. There are so many individuals who work in tandem, who work in harmony to create that cosmic consciousness. Then only that cosmic consciousness can bring down Kedusha. Otherwise, what is achieved is Avodah Zarah. That is the principle. What is the effect of their claiming to become one, to tap into the cosmic consciousness? Individualization, individuality. That's why there were so many languages. They were collectives of individuals. So one collective will become Europe, one collective will become Africa, one collective will become 20,000 different collectives. Everyone with a different language, right? But the fact that languages were created there, why? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu broke their collectivity into individual consciousness, and that is where our reality is. This is the story under the stories of Gan Eden, under the story of Bereshit. That is the story of human consciousness and its descent. Today we are holding at individual consciousness. I am separate, you are separate. I can do what I want, you can do what you want. Abraham Avinu recognized that taking these individuals and clubbing them up together with respecting each one as an individual is the way back to the original tikkun or original repair of the state of Adam. And that is why, as we said, one of the principles was that as they blocked the channel, the earth went away from them, saying that the earth was cursed, the earth was cursed, the earth was cursed, because it was not getting the spiritual influx that it needs through the channel. We are the channels, we represent the channels, humanity. And once we block ourselves with different ideologies which are not complicit, which are not in line with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plan, we are cursing the earth. So the earth is cursed. When Abraham Avinu unplugged these things, not through the whole earth, but only for one place, the place called the land of Canaan, which becomes the land of Israel later, the ability of that land becomes like Gan Eden, which means not exactly like Gan Eden, but it is no longer cursed. It is a land which has Kedusha, which has the channels open for Kedusha. And Abraham Avinu is then supposed to do his work in this land. But now Abraham Avinu, when he recognized that this is what he has to do, what he started doing, he started collecting people. He went and converted so many people, and he brought the converted souls with him. One of the main persons in his converted souls was Lot. But Lot goes away, and he sees that if Lot cannot continue, and even in his family, he sees that Ishmael cannot continue, then he recognizes there's something else which is happening over here, that they cannot tap into this consciousness that from the individual to the communal, because only when you tap into the communal consciousness, you will be able to make that channel open for the earth. So now the earth is prepared. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gifted him with the land of Canaan to do his project, so that he will be able to do Adam's project, so that he will be able to continue Noah's project, so that he will be able to continue humanity's project of bringing God, not intellectually, in principle, as Kedusha, as something which has some feel, it is when we say that we want that this place is Kadosh, and we want, it's not, I'm not talking about an idea. I'm talking about there is something, channels of Kedusha that will influence physicality. And that was what Abraham was supposed to open. Abraham recognized that it is not such an easy task. The task was given to Ishaq. Ishaq also recognized Esau was not ready for it. The task was sent to Yaakov. Yaakov's 12 sons are having big, super serious problems between themselves. And Yaakov did not know what is going to be the outcome of all their sibling rivalry. So the effect of all this descent of the consciousness, let us say, is that we have a family which is on the brink of being able to plug into the cosmic consciousness or the communal consciousness, and be able to make the change to bring Kedusha into the earth. This is where we are when we are holding for Parashat Vayechi. Any questions up to here? Because this is all very abstract ideas and a little bit hazy. So I'm trying to put it into words, all very, very high Kabbalistic ideas. But please tell me if this was understood or I need any more clarification. Up to here. Please unmute yourself if somebody is speaking.
Feel free to unmute yourselves. काय बोलायचं असेल, share करायचं असेल. If you are understanding everything, please let Rabbi know. Thank you.
Clear.
Sorry.
It's clear. Understood.
No. I want to ask you one question. You said the Lot is converted. We want to say all these brothers of Abraham, they are the idol worshippers. म्हणजे असं झालं. Abraham's brothers.
फुल फॅमिली आयडल वर्शिपर होती ना, नाहोरची फॅमिली होती ना. अब्राहमच्या फॅमिलीमध्ये ज्यावेळेला
Lot was with him all the time.
Yaakov Avinu goes to Haran. They are worshipping idols. She steals the idols from his house. Rachel, they were idol worshippers. Yes, you are right.
That means they are converted. All these people are.
Everybody at that time, yes.
मला तर वाटलं Lot thought he was with Abraham, so he knows everything and he followed Abraham.
After he got converted, he followed Abraham. You are right. But till he was with his grandfather, he was worshipping idols.
No, Lot came with Abraham all the time, all the way he was with Abraham.
Abraham came to Israel, started his journey at 75.
Exactly.
Yes. So
and he was with Abraham all the time.
For 75 years, if Lot was with his grandfather, till Abraham was 75, I don't know what was Lot's age, but Lot was also his nephew, but he was maybe 25 years difference, let us say. So he must be 50 when he started with Lot. Till 50 years, he was worshipping Avodah Zarah till Abraham Avinu converted him to his ideas.
Maybe they were similar-minded.
They were similar-minded because Abraham converted him.
Is it?
Because we don't see anywhere that Lot comes to this conclusions of monotheism. Abraham comes to the conclusions of monotheism.
No, but in the world there must be other people who believed there is a God who is cannot
That
be in the
right.
idol.
But we know that Lot comes from a family of Nahor who was himself an idol worshipper, no?
Yeah.
There were families from Shem. There were families
yeah,
from
but
Shem.
in the family also they can be
did
two
not worship
people.
idols. Sorry?
In the same family, there can be two people who believe in the same idea. That
Yes,
is
you
why
are
they
right.
follow each other.
You're right.
Because even the idol worshippers knew that the God is means he doesn't have shape, doesn't have color, doesn't have this thing, but still they do idol worship. Means somewhere from Adam they must have got the idea. Adam was talking to God, so they must be knowing that God is not in the idol. Means he cannot be shaped into an idol. But somewhere they lost the track. So the idea must be around somewhere, means everybody must be knowing, but maybe some people means they lost the track and they started idol worship. But the idea basically must be there around, means practically means in everybody's mind, somewhere at the back of their mind.
You are
Because
right.
even in Egypt, when Moshe Rabbeinu said that there is a God who's means is not in the idol, other kings were there who believed that in monotheism, in their sort of monotheism,
Right.
but so
they worship the sun as the only one God. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
That is proven today by archaeology. Yes. So there were certainly ideas of monotheism in the world because all these families come from Noah. I made my initial contention was that Adam is just another human being. There must have been other strains of human beings in the creation story. There are two creation stories. So I believe that Avodah Zarah was forbidden to Adam and later on to Abraham. In between, it was not forbidden really. It was, God doesn't really care if the Hindus worship idols. The rabbis think that God cares. But there are so many places in the Nevi'im that God says that they are worshipping me through the Avodah Zarah also. They are only thinking about me only. Okay. So God gives them credit for even if they are doing Avodah Zarah and they have an intention of reaching the Creator, the only Creator of the world, then they are being given credit and it is not held against them. At least from the Nevi'im we can see that. Okay. So Avodah Zarah, as for the Jewish people, and we will probably answer the question over here, why is Avodah Zarah forbidden for us as compared to other people? What is the this discussion will lead to that, and we will answer that question. Now, till here, what did we see? We said that really what happened was there was HaKadosh Baruch Hu raised man to a level that he was able to tap into his cosmic consciousness to make a change and bring godliness into the world. Man did not live up to the challenges that he was supposed to do, as in Adam, and again went away from the main task. At one point, their consciousness descended to become individual. I mean, not that they didn't have the ability to be tapped into the cosmic consciousness. That is what a Navi does. He becomes aligned with the cosmic consciousness for that period when he is getting Nevuah. So it is there in everybody, each one of us. But our reality holds that we are on a plane of individual consciousness, what we call the mind, right? Or our awareness. Now, think about it. Yaakov Avinu and the problems in his house and everything, he wants to really achieve that aim that Abraham Avinu missed, that Yitzchak missed, which was that he will be able to have all his 12 children, in his case 12, to be aligned to this idea of one consciousness, to be able to become the channel to bring holiness on the earth. And that is the third project, we will say, after Noah and after Babel. This is the Adam and Noah, and now Abraham and his progeny is the third project. Now, really, there is one aspect of the fact or effect of the fact of where humanity was holding. For example, we see that with Cain, the way he does his tikkun or he does his work. For Adam, he does his work was just to keep the status quo. He has to water the plants and see to it that nobody destroys it. He himself. Okay, that is Adam's role. One step down, Cain, he can repair his challenges because now they have moved to a ambitious, selfish understanding of the self, right? Awareness of I am naked, I am that awareness. So for them to make the tikkun, Cain is given the instructions that look at yourself and where the Yetzer Hara is holding. Just look. That perception at that level, the level of their consciousness, is enough to change and make the correction. Okay. We come down one level with Noah. Noah has to do something. He has to look after his, not only his plants, also his animals, right? So there is something about Noah that comes one step further down. His tikkun has to be done in looking after or preserving the status quo of the physical world. Over there, it was a ethereal world in Gan Eden. Now Noah has to preserve the physical world, and whatever he needs to do to preserve the physical world, he had to in fact build an ark to preserve his family and his world. So he has to do that. He has to, but it is just simply life, pro-life. He has to be able to understand what foods he has to preserve for his animals so that he will be able to take care of them for the 40 years. And that is what will allow him to channelize the energy down. And Babel, something changed. We became so individual and so separated from the communal consciousness, or whatever is the Ikhud, that the only way that we can repair the world is not only through perception. You have to act. Act as in you are connected with the world, but to change your status, you need to take a dip in the mikveh. If you want to change your status from unholy to holy, you have to use the earth, the world, to change that status. You have to wear the sisiot, which means that you have to put a garment on yourself with an intention that it has something more than just a garment. And that action of making the garment with the sisit and the intention that looking at the sisit, I remind myself of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, together will be then able to help you do the tikkun. So as we descend down the consciousness, we have to ascend in action. One is only mental, one is only perception. As we go down in our consciousness, our states of individuality goes higher and higher. Our tikkun also becomes more and more physical oriented, physically entrenched. Okay. Now the story, coming back to the story of Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu's first request was, I need to be buried in Gan Eden, in Eretz Israel. Why in Eretz Israel? Because as we said, that there is only one place on this planet today which still retains the channels of Kedusha that were there in Gan Eden. That is how Abraham, this is what Abraham Avinu and Ishaq with Akedat Ishaq, they were able to achieve the status of Kedusha for Eretz Israel. Now, this is a mystery that I'm not going to go into, how Eretz Israel came into. Well, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, immediately told Abraham, go. He went. As soon as he reached over here, he started doing his job of building the what is it called? Altars, and call on the name of God. And then Ishaq, we know, was forbidden to leave this land even because they had already achieved that level of Kedusha for Eretz Israel. Yaakov Avinu was supposed to leave, so he had to leave because he was saving his life. Once he comes back, then he is not wanting to leave, but Hashem says, no, go to Egypt to save your life again, because Egypt is where I am going to create from that 70 souls, some 600,000 souls. What is that story with the numbers? I'll just give you a hint. 70 represents, again, symbolism for physicality. 70 is the number of nations in the world according to the symbolic understanding. So when Yaakov is leaving, he is leaving with 70 souls, each soul for the nation, which means it is the community of the world, each soul. 600,000 is again a play on that same figure, because individually for human beings, it is 70 nations. But when it comes to the whole cosmos, the number is 6. 6 days of creation and 7 day God rested. So the number 6 plays an important role. It has to do with the 6 spatial dimensions up, down, east, west, north, south. 600,000 is again a play on the cosmic consciousness, not the communal consciousness, which is 70. Cosmic consciousness, the whole consciousness, 600,000. Each Jew represents a certain channel in the play of the cosmos. That is why 600,000. Why it was supposed to happen in Egypt is I really have not researched it, but there was some reason that it was supposed to happen in Egypt and not in the land of Israel. It could not happen in the land of Israel. It had to happen outside the land of Israel, that we were to grow in our levels of being aligned with the cosmic consciousness. But the earlier cosmic consciousness was one human being. Over here, it is the family of Abraham Avinu. Now, from here on, when it says that Yaakov Avinu decided to have a 13th addition to the 12 tribes, right? The 12 is physicality. 12 represents again the zodiac. And in a minute, I will be able to give you an idea what it says when Yaakov Avinu had 12 sons, right? So each son basically linked themselves into the zodiac. It represented a zodiac. And that is again a play on the cosmic consciousness, because the zodiac runs the cosmos. At least the influences of the zodiac run the cosmos. The 13 stands for Echad. 13 is 1. The number Echad, if you calculate it and make a total, Aleph 1, Chet is 8, 9, and Daled is 4, 13. So 13 stands for 1. So when you have the zodiac, or when you have the number, again, it is a double of 6 is 12. So 6 played out twice is 12, but if we want to make Echad, so 13. So yeah, that's why Yaakov Avinu gets Joseph's 2 sons into the picture to make this relationship happen, of plugging into the cosmic consciousness. That was the mystery of Gan Eden. So now, why do we say that we have Israel has this status of being kadosh, of being special, of being we are selected and the chosen people? What is, there is nothing different from me and the neighbor who is non-Jewish. What is different is that because of Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov, because of the 12 brothers, because of all what they were able to achieve, they were able to do this tikkun. What was the tikkun? Was from our perspective, it was sibling rivalry that was played out. Sibling rivalry is the worst case scenario, right? He is your brother and you understand he is your brother, and then you are selfish, right? That is the worst case scenario, but that is what was happening. And throughout, till Yaakov Avinu's sons restore the balance, and they are able to resolve the issues between themselves. That's when we are able to defeat the problem that was created with Cain, defeat the problems that was there in humanity. With that, we were able to plug into the cosmic consciousness, or the consciousness which was of Adam. Okay. Now, excuse me. It was an idea that came to me. I just lost it. Anyway, it will come back to me. So one of the things happens in our parasha here is that Yaakov Avinu calls all his sons, and gives them a blessing. Now over there also it is a little weird, because he says, I'll talk about Acharit Hayamim, I'll talk about the end of days, and then he gives a list of blessings. We'll go back to, because this is very well written. I don't think we will need to. Yaakov summoned all his sons and blessed each one with a poetic parting personal message. So over there again, it says Yaakov summoned them and Israel blessed them. Again, that plays there. You can't see this? Can you see the slide? Can you see the slide? Start it again, please. One second. By the time it is being searched, let me just open up over here and read it out to you. And Jacob called his sons and said, come together and I may tell you what is to befall you in the days to come. Right? Assemble and hearken, O sons of Jacob, hearken to Israel your father. So Jacob and Israel. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might and my first fruit of my vigor, exceeding in rank. And then he goes on, unstable as water and shall excel no longer. What kind of blessing is that? For when you mounted your father's bed, you brought disgrace to my couch, he mounted. Disgrace, my couch he mounted. Now, Shimon and Levi are a pair. Their weapons are tools of lawlessness. Let not my person be included in their council. Let not my being be counted in their assembly. For when angry, they slay men, and when pleased, they maim oxen. Cursed be their anger so fierce, and their wrath so relentless. I will divide them in Jacob, scatter them in Israel. So, end of this, it says, all these were the tribes of Israel, 12 in number. And this is what their father said to them as he bade them farewell, addressing to each a parting word appropriate to him. In Hebrew, it says, Binyamin, Kol elle shifte Israel, Shne Masar. These are all the tribes of Israel, 12. Vezot asher diber lahem avihem, and this is what their father spoke to them. Vayvarech otam, and blessed them. So what kind of a blessing is this? That is what the Mefarshim asks. What you just cursed Shimon and Levi. You said that the firstborn Reuven has brought me disgrace. This is how you bless. So the way to understand it is, they could be that he spoke to them these words and also blessed them afterwards. So the blessing is not brought down, but only the words are brought down. Whatever he told them. But in my opinion, there are the word Acharit Hayamim, the end of days, which we translate end of days. Today, linguists have understood that Acharit Hayamim means in the olden Hebrew just what is to be happen in the near future, not the end of days. So because Hachamim wanted to know end of days and he doesn't talk about end of days, they said, oh, the Shekhinah left him. So the fact of the matter is no Shekhinah left him. He was there with the Shekhinah, and he was not talking about the end of days as in the Mishnah end of days, how the Mishnah understands the end of days at the times of the Mashiach, but the near future. And what he was saying was also a blessing. Really, it was the way blessings work, according to me, is that you understand your potential. It is not by saying that, oh, God bless you, that you get blessed. It's saying that you have a problem, please deal with your anger. And then he goes and he says, okay, my father said I have to deal with my anger. Let me look at it. Let me see what has to be done about it. Let me remove myself from situations where I could get angry. And he works on it and he changes himself. That is the blessing. The blessing is that he repaired himself. So, according to Yaakov Avinu, this is the principal way of being blessed. You don't become blessed because somebody who is Abraham, Isaac, Yaakov blessed you and there is magic. The magic is in the fact that you can look at it and change yourself. That is magic. So, in my opinion, we are looking at some of the most interesting blessings of Yaakov Avinu, who he is hinting to how they have plugged themselves into the bigger picture. And now I will tell you my take. Fortunately, as you may have known, my cousin Judah and myself, when we were in college, we were very interested in a lot of things, like astrology. So I have a little I don't believe in it, because we can go. Our spirit is so strong that we can change anything that destiny has in for us. Okay, so that is the basic belief that Torah teaches us. But the Torah also tells us that this world is run by HaKadosh Baruch Hu with principles, with some end goal, with some direction, and the direction is set up by angels. Right now, we are in this world, physical world. There is another. This physical world is not only the solar system, the whole cosmos, right? But there are other worlds on top of this cosmos that through the using the channelizing the energy. For example, right, there has to be tides on Earth. For that, the gravitational pull of the moon is used so that there will be tides on Earth. Because of the tides, a lot of important things in ecology happen, right? This whole phenomenon, let us call, is tried to tap into by astrology, by trying to tap into these energies and try to predict what they are going to influence. Okay, that is astrology. So when Torah says that there were 12 brothers, we immediately know, oh, 12 is a figure which has to do with astronomy. We have the 12 signs of the zodiac. So what? And the Kabbalah says that the 12 sons represented each a sign of the zodiac. Nobody tells which sign is what. But I'll tell you from the Berachot of Abraham, Yaakov Avinu, and from a little bit of more information, we will be able to gather it. How are we doing on time, Nissim? We have another 20 minutes. So I can go into this.
We have another 15 minutes, but 20 minutes. Yeah. It will.
Okay. So this will take another time and then we'll sum up. Okay.
Sure.
Yaakov Avinu summoned his sons, blessed with him poetic part. Okay. Reuben was chastised for impetuousness. Reuben did, at least in the Torah, 3 things that were very, very problematic. One, we know that when he was wanting to stand up for his brother Yosef and he wanted to do it, he didn't stand up for him. He was silent. He said, let's put him in the pit. I'll bring him out afterwards. Right? He was not very forceful that don't do it. This is forbidden. Don't. And he says later that I told you that don't hurt the boy. Now it is coming to us. So we know that what was in Reuben's mind? He had very big ideas about how to save Yosef, but it didn't work out, right? Secondly, when Reuben was wanting to convince his father to send Binyamin, he says, you have my sons. If he doesn't come back, kill them. He is going to kill his own grandsons. I mean, his understanding of the whole thing is very childish. To be a leader, this childishness, the third thing that he does, and the Talmud says that do not talk about it, but we will just refer to it, is it says that Reuben mounted Yaakov's bed. He had relations with Bilhah. Really, the Talmud says don't do it, don't talk about it, because Reuben didn't really have relations with her, but he wanted to see to it that his father doesn't go to Bilhah, but he continues his relationship with Leah. And Yaakov, for whatever reason, has stopped. He lost his wife Rachel. So his main wife was Leah, but instead of being with Leah, he was being with Bilhah. So that's why Reuben somehow went inside and he changed the beds. So just by moving the beds, he moved the Shekhinah, and Yaakov Avinu was unable to then, for whatever reason, the Kabbalah tells us that just that disturbance in that Yaakov Avinu was supposed to have more children in the land of Israel. Only Binyamin was born in the land of Israel, but he should have had more. And that's why Yaakov Avinu remembers this. And he says, my wife died on the way, and he is then adopting Joseph's sons, so that he wants to add the children that he was not able to. But who was responsible? Reuben was responsible, because he moved the beds. Whatever may be the case, Reuben's actions show us that he is very childish. Although he is the leader, it is something about impetuousness. His nature is that of Aries, the first of the house. He is also the first. It is Aries. Then you have, if anybody knows any astrology over here, that will be helpful. But if you want to jot it down, Reuben is Aries. The second house is the house of money, house of abundance, which is the barakah given to Asher. Or I'll go with the barakah and I'll tell you which house it is. Maybe that way. Or no, I'll go with the way it is here. So the first is Reuben. Second is Asher, because of the Asher's blessings was abundance. Third is speed. Naphtali was blessed with speed of a deer. Third stands for Gemini. Gemini is the Mercury. Mercury stands for speed. Gemini is Naphtali. Fourth is Gad. Gad was blessed that when he will be attacked, he will attack back. So he is strong, but he doesn't attack by himself. He has the preservation quality, which comes to Cancer. Cancer preserves his house. He is homely. That is the house of the house. So fourth is Gad. Nobody needs to know. House of Leo. Who stands for? Who will tell me who fits in house of Leo?
Lion. 1 sec.
No, you don't need a second. You just have to say. Who is it? Yehuda.
Judah.
Judah is the king. Judah is the lion. Judah is the one who makes mistakes and learns. That is the sound. The house of learning also, the fifth house. So you have Judah. Sixth house is about sixth house is Issachar. And Issachar is sixth house is really a house of service. Sixth house is a house of service, and Issachar is the only one which has the donkey's bones, and he will take on himself to serve. That is what the Berachah is. So Issachar is the sixth house. Seventh house is also an easy one. Seventh stands for Libra. Libra stands for scales. What will be the guy who will fit in this? Dan was blessed with the ability to
Judge.
So Dan is the seventh house. Eighth house is the house of death. Eighth house is the house of destruction. Eighth has to go to Shimon, because Shimon was, eighth is also Scorpio, the sign for revenge, very revengeful sign. It has to go to Shimon because he took revenge on the Shechemites from Shechem, right? Shimon is eighth house. Ninth house is Binyamin. Binyamin was likened to a devouring wolf, and I'll just read another line. Binyamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he consumes the foe, and in the evening divides the spoil. So it is a lot of power. Binyamin again, the ninth house is the house of politics, house of power, house of kings. Binyamin had Shaul come from him, the house of kings. So it has to be Binyamin is the house of, he also played politics with David. So the political house is 9. House, again, Sagittarius is a fire sign, very strong house. 10th house is Capricorn. Who fits the bill for Capricorn is Yosef. Capricorn is something which, so the house means that there's a lot of hard work and perseverance, but you hit the goal. End of the tunnel, you will see light. You will end up with fame and riches and stability and success, which was Yosef. The 9th house is this was 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th house. 11th house is Zebulun. According to me, the ancestor of the Bnei Israel people, if they were not Kohanim, then had to be Zebulun. Either they were Zebulun or Kohanim. Why? Or Yehuda. We could be Yehuda also, because the king's family could be running away from hardship. So it could be Yehuda also. But why Zebulun? Because Zebulun was blessed with success in the sea trade endeavors. So we had the sea, and we were lost at sea, and we came to India by the sea. All the sea trade was controlled by Zebulun. It was his beracha, and it was his right, according to the Talmud. He was the fisherman also, and he had the rights of the lake, the Kinneret, as well as the sea, the Mediterranean, Zebulun. So it has to be Aquarius, the water sign, which controls waters. And Aquarius is again a very top sign for water. And there is this Issachar and Zebulun combination in the Torah that talks about Issachar and Zebulun supporting each other. So that is again success and charity. And then the 12th house stands for moksha, or spirituality, is represented by Levi. Levi is in the 12th house. Also Levi, the 12th house, when it is maleficent, it can become very, very negative and violent. So because it is again becomes the house of death, one before the main original house of the first house, and 12 is in the destruction of the first, right? So if anybody knows what I'm talking about, if Judah is listening, he knows. But so anyway, so what is the berachot are really hints according to information on the Torah and the hints that we have in the berachot. We were able to say that the 12 brothers or tribal chiefs were linked into that sphere that influences the happenings on this planet, on this cosmos. What does that mean? That means that they were able to raise themselves into a consciousness that is beyond, and that is the cosmic consciousness. Now you will see the answer to Yaakov Avinu, why is he called Israel? Whenever he is talking about Am Israel as something which has a unified consciousness, then he is called Israel. But whenever he is talking about his personal, individual requirements, he is called Yaakov. So in the Torah, you will be able to see whenever he is talking about, like 2 examples that we set out in the same night. Assemble and hearken, O sons of Jacob, hearken to Israel your father. Why Israel your father? Now your father is going to talk about when you are going to hit into the Adam level of cosmic consciousness. Till then it was Israel, it is Jacob, and then when he's talking about the main, unified role that you are going to play as Am Israel, then he is talking about cosmic consciousness. Earlier also, when Yosef brings his sons, Yosef, although your father is ill, Menashe and Ephraim, when Yaakov was told your son Yosef has come to see you, Israel summoned his strength and sat up in bed. To Yaakov is told that Joseph is coming. But once Yaakov is told Joseph is coming, he sees, okay, now I have to be in the cosmic consciousness. He goes into Nebuah. He is tapping into Nebuatic. Then that's why he knows that Ephraim is going to be stronger than Menashe. Right? So he is in that mode. And you will see continuously, I mean, there may be some exceptions to the rule, but that is the idea. So what is our takeaway today? Our takeaway is that the book of Bereshit is not only a book, it is a book of ideas. It is a book of some very important ideas. Let me just jot down what, talk about what by Jonathan Sacks in a very interesting article. It is there on the website. If anybody wants to join Rabbi Jonathan Sacks on the book of Bereshit, it's a beautiful article. I'm just recapitulating whatever he said. It talks about knowledge. It talks about freedom of choice. It talks about holiness. It talks about being partners with God. And then it talks about good and evil and ethics. These are ideas which is philosophy is full of it. But those same ideas are brought to us and taught to us through stories, through ideas which are something which is compatible. See, my class was so abstract today. I hope even 10% would have understood it if I have not made them fall asleep, right? Because I'm talking philosophy, I'm talking ideas. But the same ideas are there in the book of Bereshit, and you read the book of Bereshit. I want you to read the book of Bereshit with this awareness that this is all in stories. What is happening is the corrections or the problems or whatever it is that we spoke about, forgiveness, the fact that there is sibling rivalry and the fact that we have to stand for brothers' love for each other, and the whole story of how that has happened through the story of Yosef. As Julie connected how the land is important, and we have to still talk about that. Yaakov Avinu, why was it that he wanted to be buried in this land? Because this land by itself has something which is different altogether. Once the world was like that when Gan Eden was there. And then we have been, because we were able to tap in as Am Israel, as the 12 tribes were able to tap into that concept of communal consciousness, we have been gifted with the same channel of Kedusha for the land, because the earth is finally what has to be raised up. And that is, the land represents that. That's why he wants to be buried in the land, because the land itself is holy. Responsibility for brothers, for others, ben adam lechavero, all that is actions coming from ethical understanding of the stories of Bereshit. Learning from our mistakes, making the correction, doing repentance, all that, those stories, all of that are one formula how we will be able to get back Gan Eden. And finally, I would like to say, why is it that Yaakov Avinu blessed Ephraim and Menashe and said that Menashe and Ephraim will be used, their name will be invoked when Am Israel will bless themselves. They were two brothers who grew up in Egypt. Mother is an Egyptian, Potiphera, daughter of an idol worshipper who was a priest in Egypt. What's so big deal about Joseph's sons that they get this important position to bless us? So the real reason is because what did Yaakov do? Yaakov, out of his understanding, his nevuah, he blessed Ephraim over Menashe. He blessed the younger over the older, but the older did not have any hatred in his heart. He was very happy for his brother. We don't see anything that went wrong between these brothers because the tikkun had happened with Yosef. They learned from Yosef that you love your brother, whatever may be the case. That is why they represent Am Israel, because now we are all one. That is where we have plugged in, and that is what it represents. That is what the story tells us about the circle that we have accomplished as Jews, as the children of Yaakov, from what happened since Adam to now, and why we are ready for the second book, the book of Exodus. Hope it was interesting. I'm sorry for some very, very abstract ideas. Any questions, please?
Thanks, Rabbi. Participants, please feel free to unmute.
Two people are speaking together, so I didn't understand anyone. One of them at a time.
I'm Susie. Can you please
Susie, yes.
repeat? Can you please repeat about the part about Reuben? I just missed it. And is there any way that you can post this online, like in a kind of an article about this astrology and the blessings given to each person?
I wish I had the time. Some of you students should jot down these ideas. That would be helpful for me. I would love to edit them once they are ready.
Rabbi,
I wish I had the time.
We'll share the recording. Once Jeremiah uploads it, I'll share the recording on the same group.
Yeah,
So
that will be a
solve
good
it.
idea.
No problem.
Okay, thank you.
With any other question or any remark?
Yes, I'll speak about Reuben. What I said about Reuben was that Reuben represented Aries, and one of the things that the Torah talks about is Reuben had relations with Bilhah, but the Talmud says that it is forbidden to bring it up because really it didn't happen. So you are forbidden to talk about it. But what really happened was Reuben was not very happy that his father was with Bilhah, who was the concubine of Rachel after Rachel passed away, instead of being with Leah. And he didn't understand that as a prophet, Yaakov Avinu knows whom to be with and whom he should have children with, right? He was supposed to have more children in the land of Israel because the 13th child was important to make it Echad. Yeah. And the way he did it is by adopting Joseph's children, but he was supposed to have one more child. But he didn't have the child because he moved the bed. Reuben moved the bed out of the room of Bilhah. Whatever that may be, we said that he was very impetuous and very, very childish in his actions. Although he was the leader and the firstborn, in his action, he is very much like Aries. He has this childish nature of not responding to things maturely. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, Rabbi.
See, Yaakov has 12 sons. And the 13th is Yaakov.
Yaakov doesn't count.
No.
Yaakov
Why
was
not?
supposed to have 13.
13 including Yaakov, 12 sons and the father. They are the family.
Why not include Iskak? Why not include Abraham? It doesn't work like that.
Iskak is the grandfather. Iskak is the grandfather, and and Abraham is a great grandfather. But Abraham is Yaakov is the father. How the family is counted?
I don't want to argue with you. I am just saying.
No, I am also not arguing, but it is 12 sons and the father.
In his understanding, he needed to have more children in the land of Israel. It could have been more than 13. I don't know.
But according to me, one you said, Echad is here. 13 yes. Exactly. 12 and 1, 13. With the family, there is 13.
Then why did he adopt?
To whom he adopt?
He adopts 2 children of Joseph. Didn't he know that he can count himself as 13?
Yes.
So why did he adopt?
He adopt afterwards. Okay.
He adopt out of the fact that he adopted. We are saying that the Gemara, the Zohar is saying, out of the fact that he adopts 2 children of Joseph instead of Joseph, and he placed them as Menashe and Ephraim in the tribes, we will see that we have the breastplate, there is no Yosef on the breastplate. There is Menashe and Ephraim. There are two tribes, separate tribes. In fact, Yehuda and 2.5 tribes of Menashe. Menashe was separate from Ephraim. There were kings from Ephraim and there were kings from Menashe also. Okay, so we don't know what are the implications as a Navi, as a prophet that he was thinking about. But retroactively, we are saying that, oh, this is a number 13 and he wanted to achieve the number 13 because the principle of his name, Israel, is that he will be able to make Yahad, unification.
Okay, that is your way
No,
of
that
thinking.
is not mine. This is all in the Torah. This is all oral tradition.
All right.
All right.
And my Reuben also. It is good that came.
Well, is uncle saying something?
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Mr. Rab Yehoshua,
Okay, great.
of thinking about me.
Thank you all, and thank you, Rabbi, for taking your time. It was yet another excellent session, and as we draw to a close this year, 2020, it was a tough one, and I hope that we keep offering each other strength and kindness and connection in the weeks and months ahead, and that we keep meeting, supporting each other. And I wish you and all your family a healthy and a meaningful 2021. Okay. Thanks a lot. Toda Rabba.
Toda Rabba Rao.
Image.